We're just okay and we play some
Movies.
games. We're just okay.
Movie
gamers.
watchers.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Just Okay Movies. I'm your host, Mr. Pocket Biggie Size. Yeah, I think I like that one. Welcome to the show. And oh boy, do we have a fun topic to talk about. I am very excited to talk about it. And what we're going to be discussing is a little movie called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. This film, I think it came out a month or so ago. I can't remember if it was in November or December. I don't believe it goes any further back than that. It's made by the Coen Brothers, sent directly to Netflix. I don't think it had any theatrical release, even a small one. It was just straight on Netflix. And I love the Coen Brothers. I guess I should start with that. I think they're an excellent duo of writers and directors. I think the first film I ever saw of theirs was Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou, which is still just an excellent, excellent movie, along with a beautiful soundtrack that is still just so enjoyable today to watch. And, you know, then once I watched that, I started getting into like their other films that they're also very good. The Big Lebowski is always a favorite of most, and it's a good film as well. I think I still like Oh Brother a little bit more, but Big Lebowski is a solid film, and if you haven't seen it, it's well worth the watch. So let's talk about Buster Scruggs for a moment. What is it? It is a vignette of multiple stories, and there's some argument that they are connected. It's not very apparent that they're in any way connected, or they're no way directly influencing each other. They're just almost complete standalone small films. And I'm just going to go out and say it. They're all very well done. You know, Coen Brothers make quality product. I mean, I can't necessarily hit the mic. Hopefully that didn't come through. They make quality stuff. I don't think they really have a film that I would just flat out say is very bad. Just some that are better than others. And that's all up to interpretation and what you view as being good work from them. I feel, and I hate that in this review, I feel like I'm going to sound more negative about this than I really mean to be, which is why I'm wanting to start out and saying I enjoyed it. All the intricacies, the changing in tones for each story, I enjoyed all of them. But when I sit and want to call this as a whole an entire film, I have a hard time saying I really enjoyed it. And maybe I might even have a hard time saying I liked it. And let me go a little further into that thought, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because one thing that fascinated me when this finally came out, a lot of the people in our Discord and who really enjoy films, I heard only a slight few people say that they really loved the movie, that it was excellent, it was well done. I didn't hear that a whole lot. Some. I heard a lot of it's good, but, and that's always an interesting phrase. You know, it's good, but it's a little odd, or but I haven't heard anyone say it's bad either. And it's just fascinating. You know, that's very fascinating, especially coming from two guys who are excellent filmmakers. And even the release of Netflix is just also very fascinating, coming from guys who would have no problems putting a film out in theaters, and they decided to go this route. So all that's very interesting. So going back to my point, I kind of feel like I'm more in that it's good but category. Mainly because what I like about film compared to TV shows, well, mainly TV shows, because even games can sometimes fall into this category. It's a set story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end for the most part. You know, I mean, even ones that are set up for sequels, technically the movie does have kind of a resting place that you kind of stop, and sometimes there are major cliffhangers. I have kind of problems with those. I feel like it should have a nice resting point, and then maybe a little tease at the end. But if it's handled right, you know, all's good. Buster Scruggs, as I said, it's a compilation of small films, I guess you could call it. I don't really want to call them episodes. They're just short films. And no way connected, so it can be a bit jarring going between them. And we're not talking episodes like I kind of was thinking back on what's something I can equate this to as a good example and a poor and compared to this is why this isn't as enjoyable to me. And I kept on thinking Pulp Fiction. And I can't say that's a perfect analogy, but Pulp Fiction is also a collection of small stories put together in differing timelines, which is what makes it fascinating. Is you may be going ahead in the future, then going back a couple steps to see what someone else is doing, and they have some correlation with each other, although I wouldn't say they're too major. One does influence the other to a degree, but it's not completely connected. And it has a good flow, and it has a good beginning and a nice resting point at the end. And you feel invested throughout the entire film, even though it's a collection of other stories. Buster Scruggs has a sharp contrast to that in that you jump into the film, it ends, then there is a complete transition. Basically, it's this person who's reading this book, which is, I guess the book is supposed to be the collection of the films, and it zooms out, it shows him flipping the page to the next story, and then it goes in. It's beautiful, it's well done, it's simplistic, but it is a little jarring. And I think that's one area where I keep on getting kind of a hang up, that I just can't get into it because I know that ending's coming. And even when I'm like really invested in this short story I'm about to watch, it cuts off and goes to the next one. And the stories are so short that maybe it's just constantly knowing that's going to happen. I completely lose my, I don't want to say interest. I was always completely interested, but my engagement, I guess that's a better word, my engagement into the material. And that bothers me, because they're all well done. And let's just go ahead and walk through them just for your understanding. And I can, if you've seen these, and I'll kind of walk through the ones I like and the ones I didn't like. And the very first one, James Franco, I believe, is the lead one in this one. It's probably maybe my favorite, just because it was kind of humorous. And I kind of wanted to see the rest of this story, or at least see it expanded upon. Basically, he's a robber, and he robs this bank and gets caught, but gets out of it, and then gets caught again. And that's a short synopsis. Go watch it, but it's funny just because he basically ends up in the same, goes from one noose to another noose for another crime that he actually didn't commit. So it's just kind of humorous, but I like that setup. And actually, I gotta say, this is probably James Franco's best role. I really liked him in this. He fit the persona, like he looked good. And that's what the Coen Brothers are just so great for. Let me just go ahead and preface this. All these films look fantastic. They're well done. They look a little cheap, and I'm not sure if that's just... I kind of wondered that through the whole thing. Because, they're outside. It's all shot, from what I can tell, in location. If they were using any green, I'm sure they use some green screens for some stuff, but for the most part, it looks like they were on location. The scenes look fantastic. It was real pretty. But I don't know, it just looked cheap. And maybe that's just because it was a Western. I'm not so sure about that. But overall, they look good. And James Franco looked fantastic in his role as well. The get up and all that stuff was just so wonderful. The next film was actually the saddest film, I'd say, of all of them. And it was Liam Neeson. And I think they said it was the kid from, what's that movie? Harry Potter. One of the kids from Harry Potter. And he's basically like a traveling show thing. And the kid says all these famous speeches to people for money, and he has no arms or no legs, so it's a bit of a freak show kind of thing. But he finds another act that's better, and alludes to killing that kid, and now he has this new act and he goes on. So it's a sad story. The third one is probably the most like heartfelt one, and it is a prospector is hunting around for gold. He finds a little shaving of gold in the river, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna find it. So he just starts putting out his stakes and narrowing down to that big pocket of gold. He calls it Mr. Pocket, and he goes at night saying, I'm gonna find you, Mr. Pocket. And that's just, it's so sweet because he's just an old guy, and he's just fighting to try to get some good luck. He finds it, but then there's a guy right behind that shoots him in the back. Just some guy who just saw what he was doing, probably understood that he was a prospector, and probably heard him yelling that he found it, and shot him in the back so he could just take it all himself. And he thinks he's dead, but then when he gets down to the pit, the prospector turns around and tackles him and kills him. So you're happy for that. I know that might sound a little dark. I kind of zoomed through quite a bit, but the emotion is you're just really sad to see this old guy die right when he just struck it big. But he turns around in the end, and you're so thrilled, especially from the last story that was kind of sad. You're happy to see that. Okay, thank God he actually won. So that was good. Let's see. If memory serves, I think the next one is a lady who's going on the Oregon Trail. Her brother dies, and while going, and she has no money. She doesn't know what to do. She's got this cart thing she's got to take, and she meets this guy who's part of the Oregon Trail who's leading it. They decide that they want to get married, and then but she dies later from an attack from Indians, and it's sad. It's a very interesting story. Basically what happens is there's this younger guy and older guy, and the older guy just acts like a complete badass. Like, he knows how to handle all these situations. He's done it so many times. And they get stranded away from the convoy, and the Indians attack, and he's able to take them all out. But there's just one point. He gives her a gun with just, I think, one bullet or two bullets, and says, if I die, or we're about to get captured, shoot yourself, because it's better for you to die like that than be in their hands and see what happens to you there. So he fights them and he wins, but at the very end, one of them comes in and looks like it kills him. And then at that point, he actually is alive when the Indian tries to come and scalp him. He shoots him in the face. But then when he goes back to see the girl, she had already shot herself because she thought he had died from that first hit. And it's sad. It's very sad. It's a good story, though, even though it's so sad. And the final story is probably one of the more simple ones. It's a stagecoach of all these individuals chatting, and they're going to some place, and that's pretty much it. They're all just a bunch of different individuals chatting about different things, different views on humanity, and very humorous, very interesting. And that's kind of all of them. I mean, this is going through very quickly. They probably all sound very dry and boring. But they're all actually very well done in their own ways. So, by far, the very first one's my favorite. It looks just like a Western I'd want to see with a character I'm actually interested in. He wasn't normal James Franco. He was actually kind of felt like a cowboy that was, not super like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood cowboy, but maybe somewhere in the middle. And I like that. It looked great. The second one, by far from our viewing party, is the one that people didn't like the most. It's a very large contrast because all the shots are at night. It feels very cold, especially there's a couple of scenes with snow. And the palette, I guess you said the color palette, if you want to say that, it's very blue. So, it's got that kind of gloomy look to it. The shots are very interesting as well. And Liam Neeson maybe says, I don't know, 9 words. He's mostly very silent through it, kind of brooding. You kind of feel he's, I don't know, a sketchy person, but maybe not. So when he finally kills the boy, or at least alludes to that he kills the boy, it feels just kind of dark, just because you're not sure if it was going to go that way or not. But overall, it was probably one of my lesser favorites. Although I will say it was shot very nicely, and you felt sad at the end. So you're kind of going from a first story that is interesting because he's kind of a bad guy and ultimately kind of gets what he deserves, to a guy with no arms, no legs at the end getting drowned and kind of carted around for money. So, okay, that's interesting. It's a little sad. Then the Prospector one by far is just charming and wonderful. It's shot beautifully. There's these gorgeous mountains in the background and this little stream going through. It's just what you would see in a painting, and it's just so beautiful. And you can almost it's so saturated as well that you could almost watch it, feel the heat of the sun on yourself, like as if you were there. Love that. Well done. And the story itself is great, and just having that guy who's basically just entertaining you by talking to himself, and that was well done. The actor did so good. I feel bad I don't know who it was, and the pain that he went through that you saw happen to him after he finally struck it big was very powerful. So you were going from a interesting story down to a sad one and then to a hopeful one. This guy's hopeful that he's like, he said this really powerful line, and it's so simple. He's like, it was like the second or third night he'd been digging so much, I hadn't found anything yet. He's like, I gotta go to bed, I'm old, but you're older, talking to Mr. Pocket, or the Pocket of Gold. And that was just kind of touching. Honestly, that didn't make a tear come to my eye, but honestly made me a little sad, because he realizes his time is finite, but he's not going to give up finding him. That was a nice touch of humanity that I just absolutely loved, and that made that story so good. Then the next one with the girl on the Oregon Trail, that felt more like a typical Western you would see, like in I don't know, any kind of Western TV show or film. You got the lady and the farmhand, or this guy, the guide to Oregon, kind of hitting it off and kind of falling in love. And then, something tragic happens. Although you normally, in those Westerns, you don't have a person killing themselves. That's probably a bit too much for that time period. But it was sad at the end, because one part during that film, they have a discussion about, and I think she alludes to something like she could never make up her mind or pick a course of action. She was always kind of in the middle, couldn't decide what to do. And then at the very end, when she saw him, the old guy, die, or supposedly die from the Native American attack, she decided to end her life. And that's, I don't know what you really get out of that, honestly. Not like the Prospector story, because it's just kind of sad. But I do think it's interesting from seeing that character kind of grow in kind of a sad way. That moment of her shooting herself was actually a moment of growth for her character. And I think that's kind of fascinating, and kind of, especially using this trip to Oregon as a backdrop for that small story of hers, even though it ends so tragically. So that's a good one. And the very last one, I kind of feel like it's the most odd one of them all, even considering the last one and the Freak Show one are both kind of the oddball ones. So I kind of feel like this one's a little more odd, because it's so heavy in dialogue between multiple characters. So you have a guy, let's see, how many are there? 5 people in a carriage. Apparently they've been traveling for a decent amount of time. We're not really sure how long, at least not I can remember. And we have a trapper. So you imagine a trapper spends a lot of time in the woods. He looks kind of dirty. He can talk, but not super educated. You have a lady who's, I guess you would say, upper middle class. She's a wife of a professor, I think. And the third person is a Frenchman. Probably looks, not affluent, middle class. I guess the best you can describe him. and they're all sitting together on one side, and on the other side are two hitmen, and one of them's dressed very nicely, has a nice mustache, talks very what would you say, fancy, but kind of putting on a show a bit. About the best I can explain it. And the other guy's an older gentleman and a little bigger. Didn't say a whole lot. I think he had an accent, but I can't remember what it was. May have been Irish. Not sure. So they're all in this carriage going to somewhere outside of Oregon, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. And they start talking about humans. And that's one thing that the trapper started with, is I don't have a lot of dealings with humans. I mainly outside do my traps, but the humans I meet are very typical. There's not that much difference between one human and another human, even with skin color and everything rolled into the mix. They're all basically the same. And then the lady disagrees, like, no, she's a Christian, diehard Christian. There's sinners and not sinners. So you're the one or the other. And everyone's one or the other, and that's completely different. So you got one guy saying everyone's the same. She's saying it's a duopoly. I believe that's what you would call it, maybe. Sinners and not sinners. The other guy, the French guy, goes on a story about gambling. And I didn't quite understand it completely. I think he alluded to people can be very different. And they could be showing one thing but really having another. So people can really change and show you what they want to show you, but then hide something. And I kind of agree with that. I think at times we all have sides that we want to show and other sides that we don't really. And maybe that's for the better. Maybe it's for the worse. I mean, it's definitely up for discussion, however you feel about it. But I kind of agree with that mentality. And then the hitmen believe either dead or alive. So it's a very interesting discussion about humanity based not necessarily, well, I guess you could say based on personal beliefs or occupation or entertainment, as kind of mixing their beliefs on humanity itself. And that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. It by far has the, I guess, least interesting ending. They basically show up to the hotel they're going to stay in, and it kind of ends. Something alludes to that maybe the Frenchman wasn't completely truthful about who he said he was, but honestly, there's just not enough material there to even begin making an assumption of who he really is. Anything like that. But that's basically it. So you have all these films. I've ran down them. I've kind of talked about which ones I liked a lot, which ones I didn't like. I think the first one, James Franco's my favorite. Second one would be the coal miner one. I think that was fun, but I wouldn't want to see a bigger film of it. James Franco one, I want to see a bigger film of it. The rest of them are pretty okay. But you can see, just from kind of rolling through these very quickly, we have a wide mix of tones and different types of characters. And it all sounds pretty cool or pretty interesting. But when you're talking that this whole thing makes up one film, maybe you're able to follow why I have a hard time saying I really, really enjoyed it. It's very difficult. Ooh, actually, I left one out. How could I leave this one out? There's one at the very beginning of the whole film, which I don't know why I would even not include it, but it's the story of Buster Scruggs at the very beginning. It's this cowboy you would sort of imagine like a Gene Autry or anyone like that. Likes to play songs. He talks directly to the camera. He's actually an outlaw, just kills a bunch of people, and then finally he it's very humorous. It's probably the most humorous one of all of them, just because he's just a crazy trick shotter, but he finally comes against somebody who's better than him, and he dies, and they have a nice little song at the end. So now I've covered them all. My bad. That one is pretty good. That one I had to say is maybe my second No, that one's my third favorite. I just felt like the other two were a little more interesting, but that one was good. But as you can see, even with that one included, we have a wide range of tone. And with none of them being connected, with harsh breaks between them, that's why as a film, I have a hard time saying I really enjoyed it, because I never really felt like I was completely engaged. I felt way more like a bystander, or not even a bystander, what would be a good word? An onlooker. I guess that'd be a bystander. You know where I'm going with this. I didn't feel like I was a part of it. I didn't feel like I was engaged, and that's a big thing for me. I feel like film should be engaging. Whatever kind of film, I should be a part of it in some fashion. You know, mentally and emotionally. I just never got to that point, because by the time you would start getting to that point, you're moving on to a completely different story. So that's kind of where I come down to this issue of saying I like technically how it looks. It looked good. It was well written, well directed. The actors were great. I don't think there was one actor in it that felt out of place. But as a film, it didn't do it for me. You know, I put this movie. I don't care about if it's going to theaters or going to Netflix. If you're considering it to be a film, then I'm going to rate it just like any other film, and not even in considering that it's not really a film. It's a vignette. I kind of disagree with that. It's all together. It's all considered to be one package. This isn't I watched a DVD I got from Walmart for $5 of 5 spooky short films, because it's kind of considering all those films are completely separate, just on one disc. This is considered to be one film, even if it's 5 vignettes or however many there were. I still just think that they are selling this as a film, and I want to treat it as such. And as a film, it just doesn't do it for me. And I kind of hate that. And even right now, I'm trying to fight with myself and say I'm wrong, but really, that's just how I feel about it. So I guess that's pretty much it. It's okay. If you found any of that very interesting, definitely watch it. I would recommend people watching it, but just like what everyone else said, it's good, but there's that but at the end, and I hate to put that there, especially for a Coen film, but I think you're totally right. So, right now we're not doing any ratings in films, but since I'm here by myself, I might as well try to give some sort of rating. Out of 10, I give it a solid 6.5, 7 maybe. I'll give it 6.5. Sounds about right. Good try, Coen Brothers. Solid film, but I think it just didn't work. It did exactly what they wanted it to do, but for me, it just didn't work. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So, well, I am definitely very interested in hearing what you think about this film. I'm definitely still open to hear a different opinion, honestly, because I want to be proven wrong, or someone to change my opinion that I have of this film. I don't think we've had a film on this show that I have wanted my opinion to change more than this one. And that's kind of an interesting position to be in, honestly. So please share your thoughts. Send us an email to justokmovies@gmail.com. You can also shoot us a tweet at justokmovies. And actually, we do have a tweet that I want to read. It's from a previous episode. Let me get that pulled up here real quick. I actually had it up here and closed it for some reason. We got a tweet from Snipe Round, Mr. Phil Murar. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Just okay movies. Growing up, my family had a lot of Christmas movies on VHS, and we'd watch around the holiday season, including classics such as Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad, or I'll Be Home for Christmas, starring Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Jessica Biel. Oh, really? See, I did not know Jessica Biel was in I'll Be Home for Christmas. I did not know that. That is fascinating. I hadn't seen that movie in ages. I wonder what Taylor Thomas is up to these days. You know, I kind of think of him the same way I think of Macaulay Culkin. That, you know, they were so young when they became so popular on, you know, Home Improvement and Home Alone, and now that Macaulay Culkin is kind of back and in the spotlight, if someone like Taylor Thomas could do the same thing, why not? I mean, people haven't thought of Culkin in years, other than tabloids and stuff like that. I mean, probably the last time he was really in the spotlight was with Michael Jackson, him hanging out at the Neverland Ranch, or I think that's what they called it. At least that's the last time I remember hearing about Culkin quite a bit. But maybe Taylor Thomas could do the same thing. Who knows? I'm going to have to look him up after this. But those are all great ones. And that's actually, I wanted to do a Christmas viewing of Jingle All the Way this for 2018, and just didn't. Things got stacked up, and I just couldn't do it with work. And I kind of had to, because Jingle All the Way is also one of our family ones that we'd watch. Let's see, yeah, it'd be that one. Oh, we kind of went over this on the Christmas episode. If you want to hear about all of that, he's referencing our Christmas episode we did a couple weeks back. Check it out, and I want to hear your Christmas films as well. But Jingle All the Way was a fun one. I really enjoyed. I wonder what Sinbad's up to. I think he got in trouble with the government. Back taxes, if I'm not mistaken. I wonder if he's still doing anything else. Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Snipe Brown. I appreciate you sending that in. And please, any other topic you all would like to talk about, send it in. I'd love to discuss it with you. It's an absolute blast hearing all your correspondence. And I think that just about does it, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you all listening and asking questions and stuff and chatting in Discord. Hey, if you're not a part of Discord, hop in, man. It's good times. Go to discord.gg/justokgamers. Get in here, play games, talk movies. Bunch of great people in the Discord channel. You'll have a blast. Talk with Guido Nasty, Wally, and Millpool. They're great guys. I'd love to chat with you about stuff as well. Now I'd love to as well. So please join in. Also, I do want to send a couple of shout outs. You know, one thing that's so great about having such a wide amount of people in that Discord channel is get to hear about people starting up new projects, whether it be a podcast or video series. And, you know, you're really getting in when they're starting things out. That's the fun times, when people are starting, getting their footing, getting content out. It's nice. It's raw. It's just absolutely wonderful. And I just love hearing everyone's content. And I do want to go ahead and do a shout out to a couple of really good ones. If you enjoy just overall gaming news, love watching Let's Plays and things like that, check out Secondhand Gamers. I really want to give them a big shout out. They have a podcast called Secondhand Gamers Podcast that you can also check out. Their YouTube channel, it's also just Secondhand Gamers. They do lots of Let's Plays and things like that on there. So much fun. Those are good guys over there, and definitely check them out. Also, check out Hank's interview series, which just this week I was on, and it was great. Hank does such a good job doing these interviews. You can go on to his channel. I think it's Hank. Can't remember. I think it's like 4H's_Hank. If you're trying to find it, just message me and I'll lead you there. But you can also see it in Discord and announcements. You can easily get to his Discord, his Twitch channel from there. So he's done a great job with these series. It's been absolute fun to watch, and I had a blast being a part of it. So we had good stuff out there. And also, always check out the Just Okay Gamers podcast. Of course, I'm sure everyone's listening's already tuned into that. But if for some reason you've just been tuning into Just Okay Movies, which, hey, I love having you here, but check out the Just Okay Gamers pod. It's good stuff. Absolute good stuff. Well, thank you guys so much for everything, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.